Welcome to Pest Control Unlocked. My name is Konstantin Schwartz. For decades, the pest control industry has operated on a simple equation. If you want to grow, you hire more technicians, more trucks, more routes. But what if that equation is about to break? What if the next generation of pest control companies doesn't scale by adding labor, but by reducing their dependence on it? Because right now, the industry is caught between two powerful forces: a labor model that's getting harder to sustain and a technology model that's getting harder to ignore. And at some point, those two forces are going to collide. On one side, you have rising wages, technician shortages, increasing turnover, and the operational complexity of managing larger and larger field teams. Growth, in many cases, is no longer limited by demand. It's limited by your ability to staff routes. On the other side, you have rapid advances in connected devices, AI-driven routing, predictive analytics, and automated customer interactions. Technologies that don't just support the technician, but start to enhance parts of what the technician does. And that raises a fundamental question for the industry. Are we building a future where technicians become more valuable than ever, or one where we simply need fewer of them? That's what we're going to unpack in this episode. To understand where this is going, we need to start with a model that built the industry. Pest control has always been a labor-driven business. You generate growth by adding customers. Customers require visits. Visits require technicians. Technicians require trucks. You get the idea. It's a linear system. And for a long time, it worked extremely well. But that system is now starting to show strain. First, in terms of labor availability. The labor pool isn't just shallow, it's evaporating. Field service roles are competing with the entire gig economy now. Why would someone crawl under a house or climb into a hot attic in the summer when they can drive for Uber or deliver for Amazon? In pest control specifically, industry surveys consistently show technician turnover rates often exceeding 30 to 40% annually in many markets. Second, there's the wage pressure. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data, wages for pest control workers have increased steadily over the past decade. And here's the structural issue. Labor doesn't scale efficiently. If revenue grows by 10%, your labor base often has to grow in parallel. Third, you have the increasing operational complexity. A commonly cited industry benchmark is an admin ratio of roughly one office staff for every 4 to 5 technicians. That means every incremental unit of field growth brings overhead with it: routing, scheduling, customer service, billing, etc. So growth isn't just expensive, it's heavy. At some point, growth stops being a demand problem and becomes a coordination problem. And that's exactly where many operators are today. They don't lack customers, they lack capacity. Now, at the same time, a different layer is emerging across the industry. And this is where the narrative often gets oversimplified. This isn't about replacing people overnight with robots. It's about changing how work is structured. But we have to be realistic. This looks different depending on who you serve. Let's look at commercial versus residential. In commercial, companies like Ecolab and Anticimex have already deployed hundreds of thousands of connected monitoring devices. These systems don't inspect quarterly. They monitor continuously. That creates a clear shift from calendar-based visits to need-based visits. In residential, you can't put a sensor in every corner of a home. So the technology shift here is about predictive data. It's about AI-driven routing that prioritizes stops based on weather patterns, seasonality, and historical pest pressure, not just because it's Tuesday. Let's look at AI and automation. Recent data suggests nearly 2/3 of companies are looking at AI tools. Now, let's be honest, technology isn't magic. Sensors fail. AI makes mistakes. But even with the friction of adoption, the efficiency gains are undeniable. According to FieldRoutes data, companies that switch to end-to-end management software see an average 21% increase in annual revenue within 18 months, largely by eliminating manual admin work. Dynamic routing tools are reducing drive time, enabling more jobs per technician per day. Even a 5 to 10% improvement in route efficiency has a material impact on capacity. Now, each of these on its own look incremental, but together they do something more fundamental. They reduce the number of touch points required to deliver the service. Fewer inspections, fewer unnecessary visits, fewer manual decisions, and that begins to decouple growth from headcount. This is where the tension becomes unavoidable, because the industry is now operating in two modes at the same time. On one side, companies are still trying to hire aggressively to support growth. On the other side, the underlying system is becoming more efficient, quietly reducing the amount of labor required per customer. And those two trends cannot continue indefinitely without intersecting. When they do, the model starts to shift. Instead of scaling through headcount, companies begin to scale through precision. Fewer visits, but more targeted. Fewer technicians, but higher output per technician. We've already seen early signals of this in adjacent industries, logistics, field services, even food delivery, where optimization and automation have increased output per worker significantly. Pest control is now entering that same phase. And when that happens, the role of the technician changes from manual executor to a system-enabled specialist. And for the business, the constraint shifts. It's no longer how many technicians can we hire. It becomes how much productivity can we unlock from each technician. From here, the industry can move in two very different directions and two different futures. The first is an extension of today's model. Continue hiring, absorb wage increases, use technology primarily as a support tool. In that world, labor remains both the engine and the constraint of growth. Margins remain under pressure, and scaling remains operationally complex. The second is a structural shift. Technology becomes embedded in how service is delivered. Service becomes more predictive, less calendar-driven. And this changes the human element too. This isn't just about fewer technicians. It's about better paid technicians. If one tech can manage double the revenue through technology, they become a high-value asset, not a commodity laborer. In that world, the economics start to change. Higher revenue per technician, lower admin ratios, more scalable operations. And over time, the gap between those two models becomes significant. So what does this mean in practical terms? It doesn't mean technicians disappear. It doesn't mean you stop hiring tomorrow. But it does mean the questions need to change. Where are you still relying on manual processes that could be automated? And consider the math. How many of your visits are truly necessary versus simply scheduled? If you could eliminate just one check-in stop per tech per day through remote monitoring or better triage, that is an immediate 10 to 15% increase in capacity. That is pure profit. Because the companies that win over the next decade will not just be better at recruiting, they will be better at breaking the link between growth and labor. Some of this is covered in an earlier episode, the Rollins Earnings Teardown. For decades, growth in pest control has been tied directly to people. More technicians meant more revenue, but that relationship is starting to change. And as technology continues to evolve, the question is no longer just how you scale your workforce. It's how you redesign the system around it. In this case, I will refer you to an earlier episode with the Ecolab Earnings Teardown. Because the real shift isn't about replacing technicians. It's about building a business where revenue creates leverage, not laundry lists. The future isn't about how many trucks you can put on the road. It's about how much revenue you can drive without them. This is Pest Control Unlocked. My name is Konstantin Schwartz. Thank you very much for listening.